days to come. Eventually, the time went and sense of humor came. 27 years my uncle spent on Robben Island. The legal fraternity friends will probably know. He spent 27 years and Madiba spent 28 years, and he said the Indians always ask for 1 year discount. That's why. And he used to say this publicly that his elder brother Madiba spent 28 years only, and he spent 27 years. So you guys out there, the legal friends, if you have an Indian client, remember to take a discount. And in ending, there was a quote that I really like, that I dedicate to our forefathers. That I kept this quote because it meant, I thought about them when I read this quote, and I kept it. You look in the mirror and sometimes see a mess of a human being, but you don't see the lives you've touched or the people you've saved. You don't see all the love you've given freely or the extraordinary memories you've made. You are a book of beautiful moments and feelings. Never forget that. Thank you.
Thanks, Anzora. And I would now like to call Tate Selo Mlangeni, who is the son of Mr. Andrew Mlangeni, to join us.
It's very difficult to round this thing in a short few minutes, but I want to thank the Katrada Foundation, especially Sean, for organizing this, and I want to thank you, the General President and your colleagues, for delivering this wonderful lecture. My story is almost the same. I think we have all the same story, because I'm also the last born of May, June, and April. So as I was sitting here in this court, this is the first time I'm here in this court, I was just trying to reflect what was going on in their heads as they were in their minds as they were sitting here. Because you should remember that they were facing a death sentence. That what they was expecting, and everybody was expecting a death sentence. So that's when, as Shan said, because there was a lot of noise at the gallery, when Judge Devet sentenced them to life prison, life sentence. So the parents, like Dennis Goldberg's mother was there and the others, say, what is it, Dennis, what is it? Because they couldn't hear due to the noise. You say, life sentences, life is great. And so this day, when they were sentenced, it taught a lot of families, as my brother already said. When my father went for military training in China in 1962, because by then they already know that we've been in and out of prison, my father also, so they decided that if things get tough, my grandmother has already left, she was staying in Botswana, in Francistown. So they decided if things get tough, because they can both get arrested at the same time and no one to look after us. So they said then they should send us to go and stay with my mother and my grandmother in Botswana. So when my father was away and things were also being arrested, my mother, like Mary Caroline lady, then she decided that it was time now that she take us out of the country, which I call my first exile. Involuntarily, I went to exile at the age of 6. So in that life in exile, of that first exile, meant that my grandmother, when things were getting tough also in Botswana, she had to leave to go to then Rhodesia. Since she was a single woman, she could with 4 children. So she took us to stay with different families that we didn't know. First time I went to a place called Lopemanu in then Rhodesia, and these people, they were speaking Kalanga, and I didn't know anything about Kalanga. But it's a miracle how kids can survive this type of situation. I ended up going to school there. learning this language that I didn't understand. I speak Zulu to them, also they couldn't understand what I was saying. But we survived that. And then in 1971, my brother and I were then deported from Zimbabwe back to South Africa. I came back here, then I started also going to school. 76, I was also involved with the students, Soweto student uprising. So as an activist, quickly the police noticed that this son once threatened me that we are going to send you to join your father. Then later that year, I think it was in September, then I went for the second time now to exile voluntarily, indirectly, because by then the situation was tough. It's either get arrested, you go to prison, and what happened in prison, maybe they say you hang yourself, you throw yourself through the window. But I can see my time is over now, but I would like also to agree with Sharon that I think this place should be made, I think we should talk more with the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture that could make a heritage place. Thank you.
Thank you, Dade Salomangeni. So in this court with us today, we have young people who are activists in their different communities. And I must say, as a young person myself, that I think we draw strength from these stories that we hear. And we are grateful to the families, to those who fought for our struggle. If it was not for them, we wouldn't have the courage and strength to do it. But because we know where we come from and we know how brave they were, we know that we also can do it. I am now going to ask Mayor Eleanor Sisulu to come and give us a reflection on behalf of the Sisulu family. Thank you.
Good morning, Judge President, Deputy Judge President, Judges Constitutional Court, Judges Present, lawyers, and to the families, Kathrada, Mtswaledi, Mlangeni families. My husband Max is here representing the Sisulu family. My niece Ayanda, and I can see some other family members there who were late, not unusual for Sisulus. I really want to thank on behalf of all of us, the Kathrada Foundation, Shen, Shaida, all the young people. You've done what we should have done long ago. And we feel quite embarrassed. My sister-in-law Sheila, one day I complained about how some of the young people in our family didn't know basic facts about their grandparents' lives and history. And she said, well, if we don't tell them, how are they supposed to know? Do we expect them to learn by osmosis? And I think we face a great crisis, an educational crisis in this country, of young people who have not received the kind of education they should have received. And Judge Colpen spoke about the Constitution, and that the Constitution, this document, is derided so much from so many segments of our society. And our young people don't have the tools to understand what it means and how to translate this promise of the Constitution into a reality. So it's really important that we reflect on 60 years since the sentence, but also 30 years of democracy. A time when our democracy is really in quite a fragile state. And I think a time when the judiciary is going to become increasingly under attack as we go forward, because there are certain elements that are actually on a path of revenge. And so it's something that we really have to pay attention to and try to convey knowledge to our young people. And I think it's especially important that the Kathrada Foundation has brought all the young activists. Thank you for the amazing work you are doing. So I had the privilege of writing a big fat book, and I hope lawyers read big things, so hopefully those who haven't read the book will read it. And in the process, I became really fascinated with the story of the Rivonia trial. And at some point, my editor had to say to me, look, you're not writing about the Rivonia trial, you're writing about the life of Walter and Albertine Sisulu. You've got too much already on the trial. And it is a fascinating story, and there have been books written about it. There's a movie by Sir Nicholas Starden, a British High Court judge, who in 2017, after meeting Dennis Goldberg, became so fascinated that he interviewed the surviving Rivonia trialists, Andrew Blangeni, Dennis Goldberg, who else was it at the time, as well as Joel Joffe, I think Kentridge, the lawyers who were involved. That was in 2017, and his film Life is Wonderful, inspired by Dennis's words after the life sentence was pronounced, is around, and I would encourage those who haven't seen it to see Life is Wonderful. So since then, all the people he interviewed have passed on, so there's no surviving Rivonia trialists, the lawyers as well, and Sir Nicholas himself. So it shows how fragile our history is and how important it is to capture and preserve for future generations. I just want to reflect my reflection from the Sisulu family point of view. I will read a letter that was smuggled because when Walter Sisulu went on trial, he was arrested on the 11th of July 1963. Max, who was 17 at the time, and Masisulu were also put into 90-day detention. In fact, I think Max was the youngest ever in 90-day detention, and Masisulu was the first person to be arrested under the 90-day law. So Max was, for much of the time, his father's, then he was released once his father was arrested and went into exile shortly after that. So this letter was smuggled to Max while by Walter. So I will read the letter, much of which is self-explanatory, and then I will read after that the reaction to the statement of the dog. So, I should have brought my glasses. My beloved son, you cannot imagine how happy I was when I learned about your escape from South Africa with Wellington. I only hope that you chaps have reached your destination. It is my desire that you should begin your studies in England, which is more or less the world center today, and most suitable as a starting point for a young man of your age. So I must point out here that Max didn't follow that advice. Instead, he insisted on going on military training in Russia and joined Mkhonto Sizwe. In regard to our case, the state will close its case this week on Friday. Thereafter, the case will take at least another month. We have no illusion about its outcome. Whatever happens to us, the history is on the side of the oppressed people. And I'll also mention here that at that point they really believed that they were going to get the death sentence. So when he writes this, he's writing in his mind that he will be sentenced to death, and this is his words, last words to his son. I am suggesting that you may expect anything. The state has a very strong case. You can imagine when people like Mtembu and others who were members of the organization have turned state witness against us. I'm sorry that Nelson is involved. The spirit of chaps is, however, high. This brings me in view of this situation, your brothers and sisters, including Beryl, will naturally look to you for guidance and assistance. That means great responsibility on your part. At present, your mother manages well. After all, we have many sympathetic friends in many parts of the world. In spite of this grave situation, we have not lost hope. The battle is never lost until it is won. I understand that all the kids have passed, including our star in Kuli. I would very much like to hear about your problems before the end of March, as it is difficult thereafter. There is nothing wrong with writing to your mother. There is no security risk involved, since your escape has been well publicized. This applies to Thabo as well, meaning Thabo Mbeki. Why is he not writing to his father? Can you find out? Do not write to me. I am not supposed to write this letter. You may not refer to it directly. Just write to your mother, and I will know that you have received my letter. Your loving father, Walter. So this letter was smuggled via, I think, Zambia, and reached Gerald, another son who was studying, who was receiving military training in Czechoslovakia, and he managed to smuggle the letter to Max. Then I will just read from the reaction to the statement of the doc. I really had, it has been a great privilege and blessing in my life that I was able to interview the Rivonia trialists and the women involved. I had the privilege to meet Mrs. Nswaleli as well in the process of researching this book. So one of the interviews I did with Masi Sulu about her experience of the trial, and it was one of the most moving interviews I've ever done. So I will just read her experience as she was sitting in this courtroom.